slide for a very long time, so it will be a good idea to have your phone handy to take pictures of the screen as it pops up. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at the following. So this is what we're going to cover in today's session. We're going to remind you about the various topics and subtopics that you are going to be examined on. Then we're going to look at the various topics that was removed from the annual teaching plan for 2020 because of the negative effects of COVID-19 and the inability of us being able to be in the classroom throughout the year. Then we're going to look at the format of the exam paper prior to COVID-19, so what it would have looked like if 2020 was a normal schooling year. And then more importantly, we're going to look at the format of the control test, which you are going to write at the end of 2020. And that's what we're going to use as your promotion, or part of your promotion tools for the end of the year. So we're going to spend a bit of time on that control test. Then we're going to give you some tips as to how to read exam questions and how to use the action verb to guide how you're going to answer questions. And then we're going to give you some tips and ideas on how to attack the section A, section B, and the essay questions. And finally, in the end of today's session, we're going to look at strategies that you can follow when preparing for the examinations if you are running out of time and are unable to prepare fully for the examinations. Okay, so let's jump straight into our first part of today's broadcast, which is looking at the main topics as well as the subtopics. Now remember, grade 12s, it's important that you understand and that you organize your work in such a way that all the various subtopics are categorized within its main topic, because that is how you're going to be assessed at the end of the year. So to remind you, we have 4 main topics, which is the business environment, business ventures, business roles, and business operations. And within each of those main topics, there are a number of subtopics. So let's just quickly remind you of the various subtopics. Under business environment, we have the influences on and the control of the factors relating to the business environment, challenges of the business environment, adapting to the challenges that are in the business environment, the impact and the challenges of the contemporary socio-economic issues on the business operations, and then the business sector. So all of those form part of the business environments. Then under business ventures, we have the benefits of a company versus other forms of ownership, avenues of acquiring a business, transforming a business plan into an action plan, starting a business venture based on that action plan, assessment of entrepreneurial qualities, and presentation of business information. And then under business roles, we have creative thinking and problem solving, stress and crisis management, professionalism and ethics, citizenship roles and responsibilities, team dynamics and conflict management. And then finally, under business operations, we have the marketing function, the production function, and the introduction to human resources. Now, fortunately for you, grade 11s, because you are not able to be at school throughout the whole year, not all those topics will be assessed. So it's quite important to understand and remember and make a special note for yourself. So if you have your phone handy, now is a good time to take your phone out so you can take photos of the screen and make sure that you understand and remember which topics were removed from the teaching plan for 2020 and therefore will not be tested at the end of the year in the control test. So I'll remind you, these topics that I am going to put up on the screen now will not be tested as part of the control test that you are going to write at the end of 2020. So the first one is the forms of ownership. So all of these topics subtopics I'm putting on now was shown as part of the 4 main topics, but these subtopics will not be tested. So make sure that when you compare the various subtopics that fall under business environments, business operations, ventures, and roles, that these subtopics are not included as part of what you are going to study because they will not be examined at the end of 2020.
Mr. de Klerk, maybe it's just important to note that it's not that forms of ownership were completely removed. It's only those parts of forms of ownership because it actually forms part of grade 10. So with other words, you still need to know why it's to your advantage to start a company versus any other
yes.
form of ownership, and the memorandum of incorporation, and all of those things. Now, guys, I hope that you guys have access to an exam guideline of some sort. There was one that was published by the WCED earlier, so if you can, please get your hands on the exam guideline, and then just remove those things from the exam guideline, and then you just don't study those things. But it doesn't mean that forms of ownership has been removed completely.
Right, that's quite correct, Mr. Van Sale. Under forms of ownership, only these two topics or topics within forms of ownership have been removed. So it's the characteristics of different forms of ownership and the advantages and disadvantages of the different forms of ownership. Then under stress and crisis management, it is only the section on theories of change management that was removed in 2020, not the entire topic. Under team dynamics and conflict management, these 3 bullet points show the various topics that were removed in 2020, so it won't be examined. Team dynamics theories, conflict management theories, and the function of the workplace forum. And then under citizenship, roles, and responsibility, this entire topic was removed. We'll know it's a very short section of work anyway, but citizenship, roles, and responsibility, the entire topic was removed for 2020. Under the marketing function, marketing in the formal and informal sectors, the use of technology for marketing, import and exports, foreign marketing, and the production function. Only those aspects of the marketing function was removed. The rest of the marketing function will still be examined as part of your control test. And then under the production function, the production systems, the workplace safety policy, and the production cost sections within the production function section of work, that was removed. So like Mr. Van Sale said, make sure that you know that not the entire topic was removed, but only sections within the topic was removed. So make sure that you have a clear understanding of what is examinable and what was removed as part of 2020 and will not be examined within your control test. Right, grade 12s. Next we're going to look at the format of the exam paper prior to COVID-19. So what you would have written if we were at school the entire year. So the reason why I'm showing this is because there are a few schools who were not as badly affected as other schools and therefore have the option of applying to write full normal exams. So they'll have a paper 1 and paper 2. So for those few schools, for the benefit of for their advantage, I'm going to go through the format of that question paper for paper 1 and paper 2, just to remind you. But it's good for you to listen anyway, even if you're not going to be writing both papers, because next year it's going to have the same format. So it's quite important that you understand the format. So in paper 1, it's going to be 150 marks. You will have 2 hours to complete it. So again, grade 11s, I'm reminding you, this is the format of a full normal exam paper, not the control test. I will speak about the control test after going through these two, paper 1 and paper 2. So if the school does have an option, so you need to make sure with your educators, if you have the full option to write the full paper 1, then it will look something like this. So section A, which is question 1 and is compulsory, which means you have to answer all the questions in section A, question 1. You're going to have 15 questions with 2 marks each, giving you a total of 30 marks. And that will be made up of 10 marks multiple choice, 10 marks choosing the correct answer, and 10 marks matching the columns. Within section B, you're going to have an option. There's going to be 3 questions available to you. You will have to answer 2 of those questions. And these questions are all going to be related to one of the main topics. So question 2 will only be on on business environments and all the topics that fall under business environments, and that will be worth 40 marks. Question 3 will only be on business operations and all the topics that fall under business operations, also 40 marks. And question 4 will be a combination question where 20 marks will be based on the topics that fall under business environments, and 20 marks will be on the topics that fall under business operations. So it's important there, grade 11s, to make sure that if you are writing a paper with this format, that you're going to have 3 questions available to you. You only have to answer 2. If you answer 3, they're going to take the third question and they're going to draw a line through it, and they're going to use the letters E, N, Q, R, exceeded the number of questions required, and that's going to be declared void, and you're not going to get any marks for it. Okay. Then in section C, you're going to have 2 questions. these are the essay questions. The one essay question will only be on one of the business environments topics, and that will be question 5, and question 6 will be on one of the topics that fall under business operations. Okay, then for paper 2, it follows a similar format. For section A, the only difference is now that the paper will be consisting on topics on business ventures and business roles. So in question 1, same format, multiple choice questions, choosing the correct answer, matching the columns, all based on topics that fall under business ventures and business roles. Then in section B, again, you're going to have 3 questions, of which you have to answer only 2 of those questions. Questions 2 will be only on topics that fall under the main topic of business ventures. Question 3 will only be on business roles topics. And then again, question 4 will be a combination question where 20 marks will be on business ventures and 20 marks will be on business roles. And then finally, section C, question 5 is only going to be on one of the business ventures topics, and question 6 will be on one of the business roles topics. And again, there you have 2 options for the essay questions, and you only have to answer one. So grade 11s, what's important there is to make sure that you are clear and you have double checked with your teacher at school, because there are going to be no common papers for the end of year assessment. You need to make sure which form of examination you are going to have. Are you going to have 2 normal exam papers for paper 1 and paper 2 covering all the topics, or are you going to have a control test? And for most schools, it's going to be a control test, because unfortunately most schools were negatively affected by COVID-19. So what I'm going to go through now is very, very important, because I'm going to explain to you how the questions will be, or how the questions will be allocated to the various topics. Okay, so if we look at the screen now, and like I said, this will apply to most of the schools, but again, make sure with your teacher that if you are writing the paper 1 and paper 2 normal exam, it's the format I showed you previously, and if you are only writing the control test, it's going to be this format that I show you now. So this will be 1 question paper, so you will no longer have 2 assessments. It's going to be 1 question paper, and it's going to be a control test, not an exam. Okay, the duration of the paper is going to be 2 hours, and it's going to be worth 150 marks. In section A, it's going to be a similar format to what I've shown you now. So again, it's going to be 15 questions, so 2 marks each. So section A will be out of a total of 30 marks based on multiple choice questions for 10 marks, choosing the correct terms for 10 marks, and matching the columns for 10 marks. But what's important here, grade 11s, is to know that the questions will be on all 4 topics. So in section A, all 4 topics, business environments, business ventures, business roles, and business operations, any content that is examinable can, or the questions can come from all 4 of the main sections there. Okay. Then in section B, you're going to have 3 questions, and again, you're going to only answer 2 of these questions. So very similar to the format of the normal exam paper, but it's important that you understand what the difference is now. So in section B, 3 questions, you only answer 2 of the questions. Now with question 2, the content will come from business environments and business operations. So there are 2 main topics that will be examined in question 2, business environments and business operations. Your teacher could also have the option of only asking questions of business operations or business environment. So again, it depends on your school and your teacher, because every teacher will be setting up their own question paper. But know that for question 2, they can ask you work that forms under business environments and business operations, or one of the 2 main topics there. Then question 3 will be covering the sections of work that fall under business roles and business ventures. And again, it can either be only on business roles or only on business ventures, or it can be a combination where you are examined on topics that fall under business roles as well as business ventures. And then grade 11's question 4 is going to be a miscellaneous or combined question where all 4 topics are covered. So in the miscellaneous question or combined question, question 4, all 4 topics, business environments, business ventures, operations, and roles, all of those will be covered. And most likely it will be 10 marks on each of the topics to make up the 40 marks. And then finally, section C is going to be 2 questions, 2 essay questions. You are only going to answer one of the 2 questions. So question 5 will either be examined on a topic that falls under business environments or operations, and question 6 will form part, or question 6 will be made up of topics that fall under business roles or business ventures. Okay, grade 12s, grade 11s, make sure that you have taken a photo of that and you understand what I've just explained to you. Make sure you have a conversation with your teacher to make sure how you're going to be examined. Are you going to have the normal 2 papers, or are you going to have just the control test? And like I said, it is most likely that your school will be writing the control test. So it's important to make sure you know the format. If you can look at the format one more time, for those who haven't had a chance to take a photo of the screen, 1 question paper, 2 hours, 150 marks. All 4 topics will be covered in this 1 question paper. Okay, but remember, grade 12s, also to make sure that you have made a note of the topics that are not examinable, because those topics I showed you that are not examinable for 2020 will not form part of this control test. I'm going to repeat that. The topics I showed you that were removed from the teaching plan for 2020 will not be examined in the control test. Okay, so make sure that you have made a note of all those topics that were not examined. Okay, grade 11s.
Mr. de Klerk, maybe it's also good to note that the teachers are under instruction to only assess work that was covered. And because we've got different schools in different situations, it might be that certain schools didn't cover all of these topics. So that conversation with your teacher needs to take place so that the teacher can advise you on what will not be in the paper and what are the work that you have not been taught, so that you don't unnecessarily go and prepare for things that will never be examined.
Yeah, grade 11 is very important to have that conversation with your teacher. Again, your teacher will be setting the paper. It will not be a common paper. So it will be relevant to what you have been taught in your school. So make sure you have that conversation with your teachers. Okay, grade 11s, we're now going to look at some action verbs and how we're going to use the verbs in the questions to help us to understand how we should be answering those questions. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Van Sale, who will be taking us through the various action verbs that have been used and what the mark allocation is for those various verbs.
Sure. Right, guys, right off the bat, you get different action verbs, and those action verbs are what the question requires you to do. And each one will have a different type of response that they would need from you. And I've seen at the end of the year in grade 12, where we mark national senior certificate examinations, you can see that the learners know the work, but because they don't know how to structure their answer based on the verb, then they lose quite a bit of marks. So I'm just quickly going to go through these verbs with you. And the first page is the easy verbs. It's your normal 1 mark lower order questions. And if you see these words, give, identify, list, mention, name, and state, normally those would be 1 mark answers. You don't need to go into a detailed explanation of what you are trying to say. You are just listing it staccato because it is 1 mark answers. So guys, please don't waste paper and time by writing a long explanation for this. A short word is normally what is required. Okay. The following ones, if Mr. de Klerk, if you can go to the next, we've got the mark allocation for these ones. Now guys, these are mostly middle order and sometimes higher order verbs. If you see them, then these are double mark answers. And you will see classify, name, suggest, advise, propose, define, outline, recommend, motivate, and state. Now guys, these ones are normally marked at the end of the sentence. Now I need to tell you very, very importantly, you need to write in a full sentence. If you don't write a full sentence, then you might be credited with sometimes only 1 or no marks because the statement is vague. But you don't need to have a statement and a qualifier, and those are the ones that we are going to do next. The marks are allocated, both of them, at the end of the sentence. Now, guys, why is that important? You need to be guided by the mark allocation. If the mark allocation for a question that says outline is 6 marks, then I need 3 bullet points. I need 3 statements in order to be accredited with those 6 marks. So if you write more than that, then you are just wasting time and paper. Okay, the next one are more difficult, middle order, higher order questions, and they are the following: describe, explain, distinguish, discuss, analyze, elaborate, showing the impact, apply a technique if you need to evaluate, differentiate, compare, tabulate, and justify. Now, guys, what you need to do here is you need to make a statement and then back up your statement with a qualifier. Something like you make a statement because this, or and that means this. So you need to back it up with a statement for the second mark. So with other words, the marks will be split. Now, guys, this was introduced about 3 years ago, Mr. de Klerk. 3 years ago, they started marking papers in the split marking fashion, and we have seen a steady decline in the marks on business studies because it is actually now quite more difficult to get that second mark. Purely because learners don't know how to formulate their answer. But we will go through specific questions like that, and I will show you how those marks are split. Once again, guys, business studies works in double mark answers. If a question counts 8 marks, you know that I need 4 bullet points to be accredited with all 8 the marks there.
But it is quite important for the learners to know which action verbs are allocated 2 marks at the end and which are allocated
Absolutely.
split marks, because that will either save you a lot of time or it's going to result in you not getting as many marks as you should be
Absolutely.
getting. So there are a lot of kids who like to write a lot. So for those kids, if you learn these action verbs, it can save you a lot of time. So you'll know when you must write more and when you only have to make the various statements.
Yes.
So it's very important to know these action verbs.
And Mr. de Klerk, maybe it's a nice discussion piece here. Who are you writing a paper for? You are writing a paper for a marker. Now that will be your teacher this year. At the end of next year, it is going to be a provincial marker. Now, guys, these people are tired. They are human. They make mistakes. You need to structure your paper so logically that it is not difficult to find the answers, because the moment that people need to look for it, then that might be lost in a whole big paragraph. So I always advise my learners to write in bullet form. Still a full sentence, but I know clearly this is my first bullet, this is my second one, this is my third one. It's easier for the marker to pick up your marks that way.
Right, the use of bullet points and tables makes it a lot easier for markers, and it will result in them not having to look for marks for you. It will be easy to see where the one statement starts and one statement ends.
That's correct.
Okay, grade 11s, we're now going to move on to section A type questions, and this is just quickly going to remind you what happens in section A and how you should be answering them and formatting your paper. So if you look at the screen, you'll see there is a question paper written by John Smith. That's a made-up name. And section A should all be on one paper. Okay, so you'll see there, because you are only writing down a letter or one word, you don't have to skip a line between each answer. So you'll see there, if you look at 1.1, the answers are put one below each other. A lot of people like to write the answers one next to each other. So 1.1.1 on the right-hand side, 1.1.2 on the left-hand side. And then that can become tricky, because when markers mark, we're always looking vertically. So then we look at your answer and we see, no, it's not following on, so it's wrong. So as a way to prevent yourself from losing marks, make sure that you are writing your answers in the multiple choice questions, or in the entire section A, one below each other with the correct number format. And you'll also see there are margins over there, but I'll touch on those margins a little bit later.
Mr. de Klerk, maybe I've seen this before as well as a marker where they don't write the letter, let's say it's multiple choice, they don't write A, B, C, or D, but they actually write the word in the descriptor. Now, guys, that is incredibly frustrating if you are a
Marking
mark,
that,
because
yeah.
that means I need to go back to the question paper and go and see, is A actually this? Now, guys, please make it easier for your markers to mark those papers. I don't know if we can address it now. I've seen it oftentimes as well that the learners think that I don't know the answer, then they leave a multiple choice question blank. Now, guys, that leaves me blank because I cannot understand why you cannot take a chance between four things. You've got 25% chance of being
Correct,
right,
yeah.
and mostly you've got a hint of what is definitely not right, so it makes your chances even better. Never, never, ever leave out a question in section A. Never.
Oh, that's throwing away marks. You can get marks for
Absolutely.
guessing. That's the only place in the exam paper you can get marks for guessing. Okay, so just a couple of tips for you to remember. Make sure that you have your left and right hand side margins, and do not write in those margins because those margins are there for the markers. Okay, so make sure you answer all the questions in section A. It is compulsory. There are no options there. And like Mr. Van Zyl said, if you don't know the answer, try to make an educated guess. You have been in business studies for 2 years already. By the time you write at the end of grade 12, you'll have 3 years experience of being a business studies student. So somewhere you would have heard something, and you can make an educated guess or a logical guess and maximize your chances of then getting a correct answer there. So never ever leave any questions blank in section A. Then number your answers clearly and correctly. Okay, so make sure that you are firstly getting your number sequence correctly, and secondly, when you are writing your letters down, I've seen a lot of people make a D look like a B or an A look like a B, and then we're guessing as a marker. And you never want your marker to guess because you might not be on the right side of that guess. So clearly use capital letters. It's a lot easier to see A, B, C, or D there.
Mr. de Klerk, that's actually an important note there. Guys, if I don't know what the letter is, the moment that we have to guess, we are actually compelled to mark it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a rule of marking. Another thing that I've also sometimes seen, I think it is A or B, so I write A/B. It could be both. Guys, there's only one correct answer. The moment that you write A and /B, then it's wrong. You won't be accredited with any marks, even if the first one was the correct one. If you write two answers there, you're going to be accredited with no marks.
I think there's an impression that if you write both, we're going to mark the first one.
No.
But we don't. We mark only one answer.
Only
okay,
one.
So there you see grade 11s. The next tip to remember there, only write the letter or the word down. No long sentences in section A. You should never be required to write long sentences down because you're either only selecting a letter or you are writing a one-word statement down that is going to be given to you in the section where you have to choose the correct answer. So don't write long sentences. Don't make your marker, the person marking your work, go and look for the answer. It's going to be very frustrating for them. And remember, they're marking many, many scripts. You don't want to frustrate the marker. You want them to look at your work and be pleasantly surprised and motivated to want to mark your work. Right then, as we said, if you don't know the answer, guess. Never leave anything blank. Only write down one answer for each question. As we said, and Mr. Van Zyl mentioned there, we don't mark it at all if you write multiple answers down. And then again, do not write in the left and right hand margins. Those are there for your markers. So if you have a look there, you'll see that this question paper has been marked 3 times, in red by the teacher, in green by the person moderating, and then a 3rd time by someone that is a bit higher up. Could be a person from the department, or if it's at the end of the year, could be one of the moderators and so on. So we need that margin so that each time the mark needs to be written down. You'll see at the top right next to where it says section A and question 1, there are 3 marks there. If you don't leave that space, it becomes very untidy, and again, you could be disadvantaged there. So don't write either in the left hand margin or the right hand margin. And then start every question on a new page so that there's a clear indication as to where your question has started and ended. Alright, then we're quickly going to move on to section B and short questions, and Mr. Van Zyl is going to take us through that section and show you how those action verbs come into play and how the marks have been allocated with regards to those action verbs.
Right. Now, guys, as we mentioned earlier, section B will consist of 3 questions of which you need to choose 2. Okay, do not do the third one. If you do the third one, we are going to draw 2 lines through the third question, E and Q R. We are not going to mark the best one and leave out the worst mark. The third question that you've done, if that is the number that exceeds it, that's the one that gets cancelled, and that we do before we mark. Right, guys, then the next one, look at the action verb, as we have said earlier, list, discuss, etc., and that will tell you what you need to do. Right, the next one, let the mark allocation guide you as to how much to answer, and that is where the bullet points actually come in handy. Right, look out for questions that have a specific number of facts required. Now, guys, I've got one example like that a bit later. When a question says, list 5 things or name 5 things, and you go and list 7 or 8 because you're not sure of the first ones, then, guys, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to draw a line through the bottom 2 or 3, and I write in there cancel, because you are not following the instruction. We only mark the first responses. If it says 5, we are going to mark the first 5 responses. And if it so happens that the first 2 are wrong and the bottom 3 or 5 or 6 are correct, I'm only going to mark still to 5, and you will not get the top 2 marks anyway because it was wrong. Right. The next one, use bullet points to separate the facts of your answer. We have said then this one is quite important. Quotes have to be directly from the scenario. Now, guys, we have seen oftentimes, and I don't understand why, you would say, the question would say, identify something from a scenario and then motivate your answer by quoting from the scenario. Now, guys, if it says quote, you cannot make up your own story. It must be from the scenario, and my tip would be to write down that entire sentence verbatim. You don't change a word, you write the entire sentence down verbatim that you're going to use as your motivation. Right, we've seen this at the end of the year. Those are things that are supposed to boost your marks because it's a direct quote. It is not supposed to be difficult, 1 mark, but then you guys lose out on those 1 or 2 or 3 marks in the question paper because you don't quote when the question says quote. Right, the next one, draw tables when the question requires you to differentiate or compare. Once again, it makes it very easy for the marker because normally those questions say to a marker the differences has to be clear. I have to clearly see that this is this and this is this, and the learner understands that there is a difference. And the moment that you compare the 2 things, I can say this bullet point and that bullet point speaks to one another. I can see the difference is clear and the marks are easily available that way. So draw a table whenever you see compare questions or differentiate questions. It makes it easier. And then, guys, very, very importantly, all answers have to be in full sentences unless you are required to list or give or name. Okay, those full sentences means that you will be accredited with your 2 marks if it, of course, is a correct fact. If it is not in a full sentence, it might be seen as vague and you will not be accredited either your 2nd mark or any marks at all. Right, now, guys, I'm going to give you a number of example questions. The first question says, now, guys, I want to maybe state this out here. The content here is not important. This is for me to explain to you what you should do should you get a question like this. So this question says, give 5 examples of contemporary legislation that may affect business operations. You can clearly see that the mark allocation is 5. It asks for 5, and you know it's 1 mark answers. And there it is, Employment Equity Act, BBBEE, BCA, Skills Development Act, and now I've counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The bottom 3 will be cancelled out because the question clearly specified 5 examples. So we mark the first 5 only.
And it's also important to remember there, we're not going to look for the correct answers.
No.
So if you've written 7 or 8 like you have in the slide there, and your first 2 are wrong,
And the bottom
and
three
the bottom
is
three
correct.
is correct. We're not going to get there. We don't even look at the answer. We just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cancel. Okay, so
Exactly.
if you're going to write too many options, you're just putting yourself at a disadvantage. If you know that many, make sure you put the ones down that you know is 100% correct.
Right. The next question is a very interesting one. Once again, there's a number of facts specified. It says, discuss 3 ways of lobbying that a business can use to adapt to the challenges of the business environment. Now, guys, you can see here that the mark allocation is 9. Now, guys, it would be highly unlikely that you will get a 9-mark question in the way these question papers are structured these days. It used to be 300-mark papers, then you can have space for 9-mark questions. Now it's going to be very difficult, but the idea remains the same. It could have as well have said, discuss 2 ways of lobbying that a business can use to adapt. Now, guys, now the mark allocation is 6. Now, they like to do this with discuss questions. Then they want you to name the one way, name it. It's like I've got there, grassroots lobbying is a type of lobbying. 2 marks for naming it, and then 1 mark for the explanation for it. Appealing to the public to influence decisions. The next one, direct lobbying and hedging. Now, guys, remember I didn't do this in this slide because I've explained it in the previous one. Once again, there was a specific number asked, and if you would have discussed 4 of them, the last one you've just wasted ink and paper, because we are going to draw 2 lines through and say cancel. Right. Now, guys, the next one, we are faced with a case study over there. I'm not going to read that case study through for you. And now there are 3 questions, and the one follows on the next. The one says, quote, and I've highlighted the word quote there. Quote, 3 challenges faced by VFD from the scenario above, and that is 3 marks. The next one, classify each challenge according to the 3 business environments. Those are 6 marks. Okay, now guys, classify doesn't necessarily mean that I have to explain it. I just have to say which environment does it fall, because that is what classification means. But it's an application, and therefore it's 2 marks. Right, and the last one, again, state the extent of control, and that is only 3 marks. Now guys, in this question, it was asked that you draw this table beforehand. So there is the table. The challenges, and I want you to see I've used the quote verbatim, just like it would be in the case study. You don't really need the quotation marks and all of those things, but the full sentence I would like to see there. Actually, they give us instruction to say that the essence of the quote must be there if it's not the full quote. But guys, you don't always know what that essence would be or what they would regard as an essence. Write the full sentence down where the challenge would be. Now, I've got it there. Fashion designers employ fashion designers who are always late for work despite several warnings. Now, guys, because it's got to do with employees, that is under our control. That is the microenvironment, and the statement, full control. And you guys can see how the marks are allocated here. Right, the next one is one of those questions where you will get a split mark, a statement and a qualifier, because it says explain. Now guys, other verbs that will require the same response would be explain, discuss, you will get elaborate, you will get describe, and you might also get some things like analyze, and you would need to write your response down this way. So let's quickly have a look. Introduce new employees to management and colleagues. You can clearly see that's a statement. Why do we want to introduce them to new employees and colleagues? To establish relationships with fellow colleagues at different levels. Your statement is the first one. The second one, the qualifier. The next one, make new employees feel welcome. How do we do that? By introducing them to their physical workspace. Give a new employees a tour information of what about the layout of the building and the office. So you guys get the drift here. You need to make the statement and the qualifier. And guys, nowhere is this more important than in a question that says explain, discuss, elaborate, to have full sentences. If you don't have a full sentence, there's no way that you can be accredited with 2 marks.
I think it's a good tip to say that if you know the marks are going to be split, so if you've learned the verbs, the list of verbs where the marks are split, when you make your statement, once you've put that full stop, ask yourself the question how or why.
How or why?
The how or why will get you the second mark.
Exactly. I like that.
So there you have grade 11s. Ask the question. You've made your statement. Then ask how or why, because then you will be able to figure out the second part of the second state or the qualifier to get the next mark.
Right. I've also included one other question here, and that question was advise. Now, guys, it could be recommend as well.
Suggest.
Advise, recommend, or suggest. That will be marked in the same way. Now, guys, normally when it is recommend or advise or recommend or suggest, they are looking for practical things that you need to say. So let's quickly have a look here. Advise the human resource manager of the implications of the Employment Equity Act when making new appointments. 8 marks, so we already know that it's going to be 4 bullet points. So we go, the human resource manager must promote equal opportunities in the workplace. 2 marks at the end. There's no statement or qualifier needed because this is something practical that he needs to go and do. Ensure that affirmative action promotes diversity in the workplace. Compile employment equity plans to indicate how they will implement affirmative action. You guys get the drift. I don't need a statement and a qualifier. The essence of what I'm trying to say must be there, and the 2 marks are normally awarded at the end. Right. Another favorite question that we get is distinguish. It could also be differentiate or compare between ethics and professionalism. And guys, as I said to you, try to put this in a table so that we can see the differences clearly as the markers. Now it says there, a set of values, you can see the split mark again there, that are morally acceptable. So a set of values that are what? They are morally acceptable, right? And whilst professionalism is not about necessarily values, it is about skills of a specific profession. And then the one at the bottom focuses on developing a moral compass to use in the decision making, and the other one is that. Now guys, what I want you to see there, the mark allocation for this question, I forgot to put it in there, was 8 marks. Now how do we get 8 marks? Actually 4 marks per difference, because we're going to get 2 marks for saying the ethics part, 2 marks for the professionalism part, and then again, that is how you calculate until you get the 8 marks. We normally have a submax for ethics, which is going to be 4, and a submax for professionalism that is going to be 4, and we add those 2 up, and the total will be 8 marks.
Right, grade 11s, we're now going to move on to the section C, which is the essay questions. And we're going to quickly take you to the format and remind you about the important aspects that you need to remember when doing the essay question. So remember, grade 11s, this is not an academic essay. So we're not following the format that they teach you in English where you learn the academic or professional essay. This is just a business studies essay. So there are certain there is a certain format that you have to follow. So let's quickly take a look at what you need to remember when you're writing an essay in business studies. So an essay has the following structure: an introduction, and you'll see that the word must be there, and I'll touch on that a bit later. There's a body, which is consisting of headings and subheadings, which is the actual question itself, and then finally the conclusion. So if we look at the introduction, there is a maximum of 2 marks that's awarded for 2 facts, or 2 statements. So you have to write 2 statements down, and again, like Mr. Van Zyl has indicated earlier, use bullet points so we know when your first statement ends and where your next statement starts. And also to remember here is that you cannot repeat any information that was in the question or in the statement itself. if you use any information from the statement, then that will be regarded as you repeating information and no marks will be awarded for that. So in your introduction, make sure that you're looking at what needs to be answered in the question, and your introduction needs to be related to what the topic is that is being questioned. But you cannot take a single word or single line, or you can't take a statement or a sentence that is in the question itself. You will not be awarded marks for that. Okay, that was the third bullet point. And then finally, don't waste your time thinking about an introduction or conclusion for that matter. Come back at the end. So you first do your body, leave space for the introduction. So you know you're going to need a few lines open for your two statements that you're going to make in your introduction. Leave space for it. Then you answer your body, because once you have answered your body, you know then what statements and information you've used. So whatever hasn't been used, you can use as part of the introduction. So don't waste 10 minutes or so thinking about a good introduction. Come back and put your introduction in at the end, but leave space for it so that you can write that clearly.
Maybe it's also important to note there, Mr. de Klerk, the reason why we say so, an introduction only counts 2 marks, and the same with a conclusion. And you've got a possibility of 32 marks. All you need to get is 32 marks. Normally in good essay questions, there's about 45 to 50 marks available. You only need to get 32 of them. So if you lose the marks for the introduction because you didn't have a nice one, that is not a biggie, because you can make it up normally in the body. But guys, please don't leave your introduction blank though. So we'll probably touch on that.
Yeah. So it's important, you must write the word introduction followed by your two statements. So you must write something underneath that, and we'll show you why a little bit later. Okay, then the body of the essay will be made up of a number of subheadings, and I'll show you that a bit later. So you normally know that in a essay question you have a statement, and then there will be a number of bullet points with the actual question that has been asked. So if it's 4 bullet points, you're going to need 4 headings, or at least 4 subheadings in your body of your essay. If it's 3, you need 3 headings. So let the bullet points guide you as to how many headings you need in the body of your essay. Okay, so then if we look there, do not answer any bullet point in the introduction or conclusion. So what you are going to use in the body of your essay, try not to use that in the introduction, because like Mr. Van Zyl said, it will be worth 2 marks in the body, only worth 1 mark in the introduction. If you have facts left over after you've done the body, you can then go and put that in your introduction or your conclusion.
Mr. de Klerk, maybe on that point, maybe they might be confused what we mean there by the bullet point. Guys, when you get an essay question, it says required. You have to do this, and it gives you normally 4 bullet points that you need to answer. That's 4 separate questions. Now, none of those questions, the first one is not the introduction and the last one the conclusion. All of those are in the body. That is what we are trying to say here.
Okay, and then make sure you have all the different subheadings and that you have something written underneath it. Even if you don't know what it is, look at what the question is asking you and try to address that question, because there are marks awarded for the format. So let's look at the conclusion. Like I said, 1 statement made in the conclusion. You can't repeat any facts that were mentioned in the body or the introduction, and the word conclusion needs to be there as well. And then you would probably have seen Flaso on your scripts once your teacher has marked it, and this is how the marks are allocated. So the 40 marks are split according to the facts. So there's 32 marks available for facts, 2 marks for layout. So if you write the word introduction and you write something below it, you're going to get 1 mark for your layout there. Then if you write the word conclusion and something below that, you're going to get the 2nd mark for the layout for L over there. Then we have analysis marks, and this is awarded for your headings that you have in the body of the essay. So if there are 4 bullet points and you have all 4 headings in the body of your essay, you will be awarded 1 of those A marks for the analysis. And then if you got 16 or at least 16 out of the 32 marks for facts, you'll get the 2nd A awarded for analysis. And then the S is for synthesis, and that's just testing whether you are writing about the topic and the questions that have been asked. So if you are only talking about the topic and the questions that have been asked, it means that you understand what you are writing about, and you will be awarded those 2 marks for synthesis over there. So with analysis as well, or say with a synthesis, you need to answer at least 50% of the question. So if there are 4 bullet points and you have addressed 2 of those bullet points, you will get those 2 marks for the synthesis. Only if you have not addressed at least 2 bullet points, but we take 1 mark away if you have addressed a portion of the question there. But a good piece of advice is to make sure that you have all 4 headings down according to the bullet points, and then write something below each of those to guarantee you those synthesis marks there. And then finally is the originality, which is your 2 examples which need to be in the body of the essay, and those examples need to be real life examples. You can't make up examples. They need to be factual, they need to be relevant to the topic, and they need to be recent. So it needs to be something from 2020. I wouldn't go back into 2019, but it needs to be a real life example that is related to the topic you are speaking about, that actually happened in real life, and it needs to be recent as well, which means it needs to have happened within the year of 2020 up until you are writing your paper. So that's how the FLASO marks are allocated. And then I have an example of an essay where you can see how the L, the A, and the O have been awarded, and how the marks will be allocated there. So there you can see the word introduction followed by 2 bullet points with a statement, or sorry, 2 bullet points there, and you get them just for writing the word introduction and writing something below it. You're going to get an L. Then if you have all headings, so in this particular example here, there were 3 headings. The person had all 3 headings, and 1 A was awarded. If they had more than 16 marks, they got the second A, and there are 2 O's that you see there, and wherever the example is, if it's a correct example, you'll see the letter O, and then the L awarded for the conclusion as well. So that's just the basic format of the essay question, and it's a good idea to use bullet points as well as tables. So when you are comparing concepts or listing a number of concepts, it's a good idea to use your tables there. Okay, and this is an example of an essay question. So there you see many businesses in South Africa, etc. That is the statement that's been made. You can't use any of that information in your introduction or your conclusion or anywhere throughout the essay. And then you see the bullet points. So each of these 4 bullet points need to be a heading in the body of the essay. Okay, so an analysis of sexual harassment and its impact on the business, differentiate between bribery and corruption, explanation of different kinds of strikes and the impact of lack of skills in the country, and provide possible solutions. So those 4 bullet points need to be the 4 headings. So you're going to have 6 headings in total. Introduction is 1, then the 4 bullet points as the 4 headings, and the conclusion as another one. So use the bullet points as a way to determine what your heading is going to be in the body of the essay. So if you can have a shot from the top, you can see what the answer should look like. So you'll see over there is the introduction. So you will be awarded 1 mark for an L for the introduction because you've got the word introduction. And then each statement will be worth 1 mark each. So that will be worth 2 marks for your introduction. Then the first bullet point, if we take a look at the question paper, was an analysis of sexual harassment. So we've got that bullet point there. So the marker will look at those bullet points and then come back to your answer, and they'll see, do you have the first? So the first heading is there, the second heading is there, the third and the fourth one. Automatically they will put an A next to the last heading in the body of the essay. And then they see that you have the word conclusion. So they'll put the L next to that because you have the word conclusion and something written below that. Now the marker is going to start marking your work. So now they go back and they see, okay, the impact. So the marks are going to be split. Any unwelcome sexual attention of a sexual nature may cause discomfort, humiliation, distress, etc. So it will normally be 1 mark for that, or 2 marks. So that mark should be at the end of the statement. Employees may leave the business if they feel sexually harassed, and future employees may not want to work in the institution. So that will be worth 8 marks. Okay. Then the difference between bribery and corruption. So you explain 2 concepts. So there'll normally be 2 marks awarded for, not 2 marks because those 2 terms were given to you. It's going to be the marks for explaining the difference. So it's money that's offered to a person. Why? To influence that person or influence their decision. Corruption, money paid back to a person who makes the transaction possible. So that will be 4 marks over there. And here you can see there's an example. So the example says during COVID-19 there was allegations and investigations with regards to the delivery of food parcels and irregularities with regards to tenders for providing PPE equipment. So that's a real life factual example and it's related to 2020. So we'll put an O next to that example there. Then we move on to the next heading, which was different kinds of strikes. So you're going to get 2 marks for explaining each of the strikes and normally 1 mark for each of the explanations. This could also be split marks depending on how the person has set up the paper. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 marks. And there's another example. So in January 2020, employees of Toyota embarked on an unprotected or wildcat strike due to wage disputes. So we will put another another O over there. Okay? And when the teacher marks everything, in this case there would have been full marks, so facts would have been 32, layout would have been 2, application would have been 2, synthesis would have been 2, originality would have been 2, and this person would have got a mark of 40 for this particular essay question. So there you can have a look at the layout. Okay, grade 11s, we are at the end of our session, so just quickly to end off, if you cannot study for everything, so it's always good if you are able to prepare all the sections of work and study everything, but if you are not, you need to know the format of your question paper, and then you will either study all of business environments and business operations or all of business roles and business ventures, because then you will be able to answer all of section A, 1.5 questions of section B or fully, as well as an essay question. So if you are struggling with time, it's always a good idea to see or to study the 2 topics that will be questioned in a particular question. So grade 11s, that is it for today's session. Good luck for your final exam or control test. Mr. Van Zyl, thank you for today.
Thank you very much, grade 11s. It was a really nice, fresh breath to actually be doing another year of grade 11, because we've been doing grade 12 all the time now. So guys, I hope it goes well and we can end off this mad dash COVID year with a bang.
All right, work hard and good luck for your final. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.